Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. Federal budget was presented yesterday, and there is a lot of debate and discussion on the federal budget, primarily on the revenue collection, the expenditures, and the priorities. And this is actually what budget is. It's about the revenue collection, and it is about the expenditures. This time, we are going to talk about the priorities that government has set for this budget, 2020 and 2021. If we look at the total revenue collection, the revenue collection was targeted at 4.7 trillion rupees. We were expecting that we would reach that point. But because of the COVID situation, because of this pandemic situation that we are challenging, that we are facing all over the world, especially in Pakistan, we almost collected 3.9 trillion. That is what is expected, and this is the budget for 3.9 trillion. In the 3.9 trillion, there would be, of course, we have to make expenditures, and the expenditures are going to be somewhere around 7.136 trillion. There is, of course, deficit. But when we talk about expenditures, we have to talk about the priorities that we are going to set, that priorities we have set in this budget, the government has set in this budget. The government would be focusing on primarily on the areas that need more attention in these times. COVID is one. Development is another area in which government would be focusing on. But while we are going to discuss about the revenue collection, the expenditures and the priorities, we're also going to discuss a little bit about the economic structure, the economic system, the economic policies that the government has set for the country. Many economists call this budget as a survival budget. Some people call it the COVID budget. So there are challenges, as we are just talking about, the challenges that we are facing, the budget that we will be using for the development sector. We'll be discussing about this with our special guest. We are joined by Mr. Abdullah Yusuf, renowned economist and former chairman, FPR. He's joined us on Skype. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Mr. Yusuf, thank you for joining us. Talking about this budget, the revenue collection, of course, as we all know, was short of the target. But looking at the revenue, the surplus, deficit, all these things, what do you think about the priorities that are set by the government in this budget?
Well, thank you. Actually, as you know, this budget is really critical, and it's a very challenging task from the national point of view because of this whole environment of this coronavirus, which has affected already the economy very so far. Now, you see how we are going to handle this and how we are going to move forward. These are those questions. The actual budget which has been put out, there they are showing actually increase in the revenue target from about 3.9 trillion to about 4.9 trillion.
Yes.
That is about 27% increase as compared to the current year. Now, keeping in mind the actual situation that we face today of the economy, I think that it will be a big task and challenge for the FPR to try and actually achieve this target. It's not going to be easy. But on the other side, of course, we have a huge issue of expenditure. And there as you know, our number one expenditure is the debt servicing, that is the interest charges. Then we have the defense, and then we have our own expenses, and then PSDP, etc. Now, the deficit that we are looking at is almost 3.5 trillion rupees.
Yes.
If you actually look at this scenario and situation from the national point of view, we have to now manage and see what we can do. One side, on the economy side, we have to now actually try and look after the industrial sector, the agriculture sector, the services sector, all these sectors, whatever is possible needs to be provided as support, assistance, facilitation to actually promote the industry as a whole, because you have to have your growth in the GDP,
Right.
which is at the moment in the minus 0.4% or whatever. That is something which is a very big task and a very critical situation. On
Right,
the
Mr. Yusuf,
revenue
you
side,
just talked about the expenditures and of course the areas that we should focus on. You talked about agriculture and services sector. Industries, production, manufacturing has gone down. But interestingly, agriculture has been comparatively doing a little better. And this time government is also focusing on giving a bit relief to the agriculture sector. Now, when it comes to agriculture sector and the policies in the agriculture sector, we see that we need to focus on the policies so that in the next, let's say, budget, we would be heading in the right direction. For instance, if we are now focusing on sugar at the moment, but there would be crisis, let's say, expected maybe when it would come to cotton and wheat for that matter. So setting the priorities right and in the policy, economic policies, how do you see that, the agriculture sector?
you see, we have that huge potential, we have to understand that. Now we are at the moment also importing a lot of agricultural products, which are actually not really necessary if we are going to develop our own site and grow those kind of things. We don't have to do that because that's a big cost to us in a way, because there's a trade deficit which is created as a result of that. Now, on the if you look at our production of the agriculture sector, the largest is your textile sector. And there, what I feel we have as a potential is that we can go for some value addition. Here, what we are doing, we are producing the cotton and then we are exporting that. But we are not really completing the process of developing, one
Right.
whatever your cloth, your suit, or your whatever dress that will get you. If you are selling your cloth at the moment at $1, probably you will be able to get $10 for if you've developed the whole thing. As you know, we are exporting something now to Bangladesh, and they are selling the finished products and
Right.
exporting the finished products. Look at
Right. Mr.
that
Yusuf, please
difference.
stay with
And why
us.
is it that we
Right, please
can't
stay
do
with
it?
us on Skype. You are joined by Mr. Agha Shahab, President KCCI, on phone. Assalamu alaikum. Mr. Shahab, welcome to the show. Discussing about this budget, we all know about the revenue collection and the expenditures that we would be having. Talking about the priorities, government's priorities this time, how do you see the development sector and the money that we are allocating to the development sector? Of course, as people are discussing about this budget, that this budget is a survival budget, and we couldn't do much about this. What is your take on this?
So what I understand is, if you, at this time, if you adopt any economic model, this is a very difficult time we are facing in Pakistan. Actually, it's all over the world. And if you take socialist system, capitalist system, traditional economy, whatever the model you adopt, so market economy, free market economy, or mixed economy, or planned economy, or open economy, or hidden economy, or closed economy, or even dual economy, no economic model will work over here in this country now. Because, we have got many meetings with the Ministry of Commerce, LBR, and Ministry of Finance. And we have, many proposals we have discussed with them. And our focus at that time, our efforts is for export. this is not export-oriented economy of Pakistan. Export is only the 7 to 8% of GDP. We
Right.
should focus on the domestic economy. You know, if we talk about, though we understand the importance of foreign exchange earnings through export, but in this present unprecedented crisis, priority should be the survival of Pakistan economy, and the survival of economy is for domestic economy. So we have put many proposals over there, but unfortunately, what we think that this is not the relief budget.
Right. So,
And,
Mr. Shah, making it easier for our viewers to understand, where is the issue? The issue is with the revenue collection, revenue generation, or the issue is with the policies and setting the priorities. Where do you see the issue?
No, we have to understand that last year, the revenue target was 5,500. And that time, we also facing the recession all over the world. And I'm talking about December 2019. After that, the Corona period is come. And, that time, we cannot achieve that target. How it's possible that, when the falling in monetary disturbance that time falling incomes, that time falling in foreign trade, that time falling in oil prices, that time falling of employment, that time falling in asset value, plus the Corona effect. So it's a liquidity crisis that time. And now, after Corona, it's total economic decline. And we are facing social disorder. We are facing monetary distress. We are facing agricultural distress. We are facing manufacturing distress. And now services distress. So the problem is, that time we could not achieve the target. How is possible to we can get this target? Now, the prime objective of any government is to transform the society.
Right. Mr. Shahab, please stay with us on phone call. Mr. Yusuf, talking about the debt services, as you mentioned earlier, what can we do to improve this area, because this consumes a major chunk of the revenue collection and expenditures. Make us understand the issue in debt services, and is there a way out? How can we wriggle out of the situation, this debt services and the major chunk, 2.946 billion rupees? How can we get out of this?
Actually, now you see, we have already accumulated so much of debt, and then we are having to pay the interest charges of almost 3 trillion rupees now per year. So the point I would like to make is, because unless you are now going to repay your loans, you are not going to come out of this issue of having to pay the interest charges. And how can you pay the loan? Because you don't have that money. The only way forward, in my view, is revenue mobilization. You've got to increase your revenues, your income side. Now, so that you don't have that fiscal deficit which is adding to the debt, the total debt every year, increasing the debt, and as a result, increasing your debt servicing. So the point is, the question is that how can we manage this increase, which is absolutely necessary from our national point of view. Now we have the issue at the moment, a big issue of the economy, which is being affected at the moment with this corona problem.
Right.
What I think we can still try to do, that is your effort to try and bridge this tax gap. At the moment, we have almost 70% tax gap, which means that if you are collecting about 100 rupees of revenue, you are not able to collect. So,
Right.
mainly because of cash economy, non-documented economy, and people are just getting away, evading, avoiding taxes. Now, what we need is to substantially increase our taxpayer base, and as a result, increase our revenue and tax GDP ratio. that will be managed and will be possible if we apply this formula, which is a globally recognized system of this automation process. Because your CNIC number is your sole identifier, and on this basis, all the economic activities you get the information from those sources, and based on that information,
So,
then you reach out to those potential taxpayers,
right.
and that will definitely bring them into the tax net, increase your taxpayer base, and hopefully increase your revenue also.
Right. And right, Mr. Shahab, talking about this tax collection and this issue, though it's not new, but we need to focus on this because looking at the expenditures, looking at the debt services, things are bleak, I would say, and not now. Things have been bleak in the past as well. What are the issues in increasing the tax net, the tax base, as we call it? Is it difficult? Is there some issue with the model that we are working on or the formulas that we are working on? What is the issue over there? Mr. Shahab, can you hear me? Right, right. Mr. Yusuf, I'll repeat my question. What is the issue, let's say, with the tax collection? Because we can talk about the budget, we can talk about the budget allocation, but the real problem process, and as you were discussing earlier, we need to increase our tax net, our tax base, as you said. What are the issues over there? Is the issue with the formula that we are applying to collect the taxes? Is the issue with with our approach, let's say, with FBR, within FBR system? What are the issues in tax collection?
Yeah, actually, the issue is that you've got to first be absolutely clear and sure about a policy decision that you have to take, that this is something that we must do, we have to do. After you do that, then comes the implementation stage. For the implementation, I would suggest that we should try to get the best possible inputs. Now, for instance, in our case, we have this NADRA, our institution, which has a huge number of the detailed information on everybody, on individuals. If we are going to actually utilize them, I would say, to use that information base, which can then be added also for certain areas which are not being covered at the moment, because we've got to, as I said, we've got to get all types of information from the economic sources. So if we actually decide now that this has to be now followed and that has to be implemented, as you know, in the world, this has already happened in number of countries. We can even try to use some of those country role models to actually get their input and try to get that input which is necessary to use that information and try and actually implement it for our benefit, because this is an area, in my view, which is absolutely necessary. And as you know, because we have this cash economy problem, the black economy problem, and we are just not able to do anything or move forward. And the only way forward is this automation process, which
Right,
is
right.
your DNIC number has to be made the base to get all types of information from all sources. And then when you have everything in front of you, there is actually a country, um, I think Brazil, or probably, yeah, Brazil, where what they do is they get all this information from all the sources, more than 37 sources or something. And then about a month before, they send you an email to say, in our view, this is your tax return, which you may look at and then see if you want to make any alterations. They have
Right, right.
so much of that detail that they make the tax return for you. So this is the sort of thing we have to also now try and achieve.
Right. Right. Mr. Shahab, coming back to you, the issue of tax collection is a big issue. Though we are discussing about the budget, we're discussing about the expenditures, 7.136 trillion, 2.946 billion would go to debt services, 1.289 billion for defense, 2.110 for other expenses that we would be having, 650 billion for planning and development. Now, my point is that when we talk about budget, the issue, as Mr. Yusuf was saying earlier, the issue is about expanding our tax collection, about identifying those sources of economy which can be taxed. Now, the issue is that we don't have much information. The issue is also with how FBR, let's say, is approaching those sources of economy who can be taxed. What can we do to expand our tax collection and at least get rid of some chunk of this debt services?
Yeah, look, the problem is undocumented economy.
Yes, right.
This is the biggest problem, and the undocumented economy in Pakistan, I think, is twice the size of the documented economy, and a very large amount of capital is blocked in idle investment. In view of the prevailing global economic crisis and its negative impact on Pakistan, it is essential to release the blocked capital and encourage investment into all sectors of industry and businesses. And that was our idea to they give incentive to construction industry. I think they should give this incentive to across the board, so that the black economy amount can be collected and they can be the part of our documented economy.
Right.
And I think we must understand that a budget which does not favor industrial survival and startups is not a relief budget. We are in a state of total paradigm shift. Our economic system is totally changed. We have to change all the institutions and comply with the required changes, because after COVID-19 the world is totally changed, and we have to understand this change. Even all the departments, all the institutions, I must insist on revival of industries and startups. Our youth is 60%, and they must move forward, and the computer literacy, digital literacy is must.
Right.
And we can find many ways, many sectors in our economy, and we can fulfill their demands and needs. Actually, the wealth creation is the main objective of the government. And they should work on wealth creation, so the distribution of wealth automatically come from the industrialization and the transformation of society. We can see the employment and everything will go in the positive way. And if we talk about domestic economy, when they fulfill the requirement of the domestic market and the quality is good of their product, they can go for export and earn foreign exchange for our country. So self-reliant development strategy, I think, is the need of the hour.
Right. And Mr. Yusuf, this point is very important, raised by Mr. Shahab. The point is that overall, I think the way people interact with each other, our working ethics, working environment has changed after this COVID-19 challenge. And struggling economies are, I would say, the worst hit by this COVID-19 challenge. Now, the issues for Pakistan, as we know, because of this COVID-19, we couldn't achieve even the target that we set for the revenue collection. We couldn't do that. Now, major chunk, as I'm repeatedly saying, is going to the debt services. If we talk about, as Mr. Shahab said, giving some kind of cushion to the youth, to the people who are doing some business, or maybe who can, at least work or earn their living, generate revenue, we have to work with them. And government has allocated, some expenditure on that, almost 650 billion of the total budget allocation of the expenditures. Now, how do you think that this challenge is going to impact further our economy and in future the revenue generation? This COVID-19, already economy not doing very well, I would say. People would be having difficulty in doing business. Import and exports have been affected. What is the situation? How do you see it?
You see, there is absolutely no doubt that we have this serious issue of COVID-19. And that has affected our economy, and it is a big challenge today for us to try and deal with it and to move forward. So we have to now do a number of things. One, I feel on the economy side, we have to try and get maximum input for whatever changes that we have to try and introduce. Because this trade deficit is on one side and your fiscal deficit is on the other side. For your trade deficit side, you have to now try to see what you can do to reduce your imports and then increase your exports,
Right.
because your exports have come down substantially at the moment. We have to now work on this whole matter in a very, very serious manner, I would say. And on the other side, the revenue side, as I told you, there is this tax gap which exists in any case because of our black economy problem. Now, 70% of tax gap means that if you're collecting about 4 trillion rupees, it is going to be about 2.8 trillion. That
Right.
is your tax gap. Now, if you are able to manage that or get that also, you will have a huge benefit coming to you on your revenue side.
Rightly said.
And that,
Sir,
as
sir,
I said,
sorry to interrupt you. We are joined by Mr. Waqar Ahmed, Executive Director, SDPI. He's a renowned economist. Assalamu alaikum.
जी वालेकुम।
Mr. Ahmed, welcome to the show. Talking about this budget. Now, we are discussing about the budget allocation, expenditures, and the priorities set by the government. We know the tax gap, huge, that is 70%. Identifying those sources of economy that can be taxed is one of the important points, as Mr. Yusuf has just mentioned. Now, looking at the whole economic, I would say, structure and the challenge posed by COVID, what are the areas that we can focus on? Honestly speaking, there's not much that we are doing on the manufacturing side. So there goes the export. Now, imports are there, and we might see decline in them as well. We have seen decline in the imports. What is the way out? Make us understand, and for our viewers, so that easily we can understand the whole situation.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think first and foremost, you were very right in pointing out that government's expenses are bound to rise in the face of COVID. And as there are going to be several rounds of COVID, now that we know, these expenses are certainly bound to increase, and government is cognizant of this fact. So in these times, it is of utmost importance that government meets its revenue target. Now, there will be challenges because in a low growth environment, collecting revenue from the existing sectors, including the manufacturing sector to which you were pointing out, is going to be very difficult. But I certainly believe there is room to meet meet this challenge, and of course come up to the 4.9 trillion rupees of revenue target which the government has set for itself. And while yes, the rate of taxation or the tax bases on which taxes could be imposed cannot be increased, but there is room to improve tax administration side. By improving the administration and audit side, one can sort of reduce compliance cost of taxpayers, make it more easier for taxpayers to come into the tax net. Second, I believe that a complementary effort to kickstart the process of job creation will be essential. And once again, of course, government has given a tax-friendly package for construction sector, and we believe that in this budget, several other sectors have also received tax break. I think while this is good for the supply side, from the demand side, for people to afford real estate for first-time house and apartment buyers, one would also expect that the central bank would complement this budget by creating a very conducive environment and stimulate demand. So, for example, we had suggested that in the case of real estate, mortgage finance should be eased for first-time buyers so that demand in construction sector can be created and job creation process can be kick-started.
Right. Mr. Vikas, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Mr. Shahab, these are the areas that Mr. Ahmed just focused on, Mr. Vikas Ahmed. We can give cushion to the businessmen so that they have this ease of doing business. Now, my point is that even now doing business would be tricky, I would say, in this COVID-19 situation. A lot of business, I would say, is already shut down, though there's a smart lockdown going on, and Prime Minister rightly said that we cannot go for absolute lockdown because, of course, we need some sources. We need the economy to go on, the whole circuit of economy, but there are very now limited sources of economy, limited areas where we can work on. Do you agree with this point?
Yeah, I think if we talk about large-scale industry and the corner shops and all sector of the economy, entire, I think, domestic economy as well as the exports have been badly hit due to lockdowns imposed to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And external factors, including a slowdown in global GDP and falling consumer demand, will have a long-term impact. So these are the realities we have to face, and according to these ground realities, we should work out to adopt the policies which suits our environment. And I believe that the transformation of society is only achievable because of working in industrialization and revival of industries. And economical and the economical and technological and institutional dependence for third world countries like us, where we go for Western, we adopt Western model. I think this is not the time, and we should work out for where are our brains, our research and development people and economists. We should work on if you are taking loans from the IMF, why should the business community suffer? Our cost is going up, and we are competing with India and Bangladesh, and our cost is going up and up day by day. And the survival of industry and survival of business is now is a big question mark.
Right. And Mr. Yusuf, talking about manufacturing, you talked about the tax gap earlier, rightly pointed out, 7%, 70% gap in the tax. What can we do to improve our manufacturing side? Earlier, we used to discuss about the shortage of energy. Things are a little better now, this time, but now we have this COVID-19 challenge. Keeping the present challenges in mind, what are the areas that we can focus on in terms of manufacturing and production?
Well, thank you. You see, when we talk about the economy, it is, of course, including the manufacturing sector, the agriculture sector, and the services sector, and all the sectors have to be basically looked at to see what can be done to actually improve their performance. Now, on this manufacturing sector, we have two main things to try and manage. One is your local industry. I mean that the demand of the industry locally, whatever they are producing is then being consumed locally, and the other is the export. Whatever they produce, then they will export those products. Now, on the export side, we have this issue at the moment, this big issue because of the coronavirus issue, that most of the countries are not now having those requirements. First, that we were sending the goods to certain country, they are just not able to now buy those goods from us because of the demand actually having gone down. Now, all these things require us to meet some of those gaps that we have been having already and try and take some benefit out of that. For instance, as I mentioned, one of the main export item is your textile sector. And there, what we are doing, we are exporting bulk of it. We are exporting only the, the cloth. But why are we not able to value add and produce the actual dress or whatever,
Right.
which will get you much more in terms of revenue as opposed to whatever you will be getting or are getting at the moment. So potentially, and then of course we have that competitive issue. We have to try and see now that what is our cost factor and how we are able to globally compete. That has to be seen, that where are we having those issues, like for
Right. So
instance
when we
this
talk about the value addition, of course, that would need a whole mechanism, machinery, industry, and even for that, we'll be needing, let's say, a businessman or an industrialist would be needing heavy packages, heavy amount of money to spend over there, and then probably get revenue out of it. Is that viable for a businessman, for an industrialist, ambitious industrialist in Pakistan? Is the environment conducive enough?
In my view, I feel an opportunity and a great opportunity and a benefit for the industrialist. We just have to see now what can be done from the government side to facilitate them, because they have to make the investment and they will also get a reasonable return. So that is the area where the potential is there and the benefit is also going to be there for the industrial sector. Now,
Right.
how is it? Why is it that we are not able to do, and a country like Bangladesh is actually doing it? What is the problem with us? They are having much higher exports than us. What is the problem? We have to understand, we have to try and focus, and we have to definitely go forward, because we really don't have those kind of options to leave them as it is and just don't bother. We have to
Right.
do it.
Right, right. Mr. Shahab, my last question. This was a very interesting point that we need to bridge the gap between the government and the businessmen. Now, if businessmen, they have an idea about how to go about improving our manufacturing side, improving the industry, the government has to give businessmen a bit of cushion, especially the industries. Do you agree with that? And if we want, let's say the government wants to give cushion to the businessmen, how can we do it? What are the areas that we can focus on?
I mean, Mr. Yusuf, talking about export, I'm disagree with the, export, we cannot focus on export all the time. Since 72 years of Pakistan, entire export sector hardly contributes 7 to 8% of our GDP, while the domestic economy contributes 92% of the GDP. And despite the generous support to export sectors during the COVID-19 pandemic, the exports have declined 84%.
Right.
Even in normal circumstances, despite all the subsidies and support, total export have not exceeded 25 billion. Look at the history of the Pakistan. And
Right.
it's confined only 5 big sectors, namely textile and surgical and carpet and sport. And, that was my idea when I was chairman export over there in Karachi Chamber. Then I said that we should focus on the product diversification. We have many products, besides textile and other allied products. We should focus on the product diversification and geographical diversification. There are above 200 countries of the world.
Right.
So
right.
there must be many products over here and sectors we can work out. Like meat and poultry, like fresh fruits and vegetables. There are 34 initiatives.
Right.
That was my idea, to have a promo council for different kind of sectors, and we can promote their products all over the world. Now,
Right. Mr. Shahab,
you're talking about the gap between government and businessmen. Our chairman, Mr. Siraj Qasim Teli, tried many times, and we have we have invited many, like Governor of State Bank, like Mr. Razak Daud over there in Chamber, and we have suggested many, solutions for the problem. But I'm sorry, we are trying to do our best, but the situation is going worse.
Hope for the best.
And,
Mr. Shab, thank you for joining
yeah.
us. Mr. Abdullah Yusuf, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. We discussed about the budget that was presented yesterday. Now, the budget, its expenditures, the revenue collection, we talked about it in our show. Main focus of government was on giving people a little bit of relief. 650 billion rupees for the development sector. Now, this is what a layman basically is concerned about. We would be spending 80 billion for power sector. This is very important. We talk about running the economy, about the industry, electricity and all that. So 80 billion would be going over there. 70 billion for water schemes, equally important. 14 billion for the food, agriculture and food security. For climate, 5 billion. This is important that climate has been given priority, and 24 billion for SDGs. Now, the issue with the whole economic thing is, just to make it understandable for our viewers, for a layman or a common man, since the economic jargon is very difficult, so I'm just making it a little bit easier for myself and for the viewers. We need to work on the tax gap, that is 70%. Now, which means that a lot of areas are there which need to be taxed. People need to put in more trust in the revenue collection, tax collection, and if we work on that, we can do tremendous, we can do well. But of course, there are issues in the tax collection. We have to identify those areas which can be taxed, and we can work on them. When it comes to generating revenue, manufacturing is very important. And on that side, in last couple of years, in last 5 to 10 years, we saw many challenges. We saw terrorism, we saw economic crunches as well. We go to IMF for that matter. So these things are going on, but manufacturing needs to be focused on. And when we talk about manufacturing, there needs to be a connection between the government and the businessmen and the industrialists. So if industrialists can point out those areas where they can focus on, what the government can do is to give them a bit of cushion. This government has pointed out some areas that they are focusing on, but of course there is room for improvement. And we can focus on a lot of other areas. So 2 points primarily: manufacturing, bridging the gap between the businessmen, industries and the government, and the tax gap. We need to certainly work on the tax gap issue. Thank you for watching today's dialogue. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.